Welcome, everybody. This is Sifu G from the Esoteric Warrior, and you're listening to the Tao Kung Fu podcast with Sifu Keith King, all the way from Guangzhou, and his style is a Nung Wing Chun style. Welcome, brother.
Hey Gary, hi Sifu Gary, good to meet you again. Hope
Yes,
you're
man.
well.
So you know what this is about. I get to bring all my friends and teachers on that I respect, and I would like to know more about their art. So I'm going to hit you with the first question. What got you into the martial arts and all that biz?
So for me, my earliest memory is of training martial arts. I was about 4 years old, and my father would stand me at one end of the room, and he'll be at the other end with these like small hacky sack kind of balls, and he would be throwing them at me. And his whole goal was to like move out the way or to try to, block them. He'd be doing very small, like what we were calling Wing Chun, like pack cells to keep them from hitting me. And we'd do that over and over again as a kid. And yeah, that was my first memory. So for me, martial arts has always been a part of my life. Then when I was about 5, my mother, she used to do judo, and she took me along to the local judo club. And I started training judo, which I absolutely love. And even to this day, I think judo is something every child should do. It has saved my life so many times, not necessarily in fights, but falling, especially when your kid's climbing up high or jumping over things. Just learning how to fall, learning how to roll has saved my body from lots of injuries, which is good. But yeah, my dad was also a martial artist as well. So back home, apart from doing this and training, we were like throwing balls at me, we'd play fight, and he was always very, very good. Um, and when I was very young, I remember asking him like, "What do you train?" Because I was interested, and he would tell me about like learning some boxing from his father, because his father was a boxer in the Navy. And then when he was older, he went and did some Southern Shaolin Kung Fu, and he went to do Jiu-Jitsu as well. I'm not sure what style of Jiu-Jitsu he did, but he was a huge fan of it, and that was the art he got most proficient in. So whenever we'd play fight, I just remember no matter how I tried to punch him, very quickly I'll be grabbed, thrown to the floor, and locked there, unable to move.
Maybe the traditional jiu-jitsu, not the BJJ, but the old traditional jiu-jitsu is very, very effective.
Oh, absolutely. Seriously, even up until when I left England, I could not touch my dad, even though I had been training martial arts all those years. I just could not touch him. It was very impressive, very impressive. But yeah, so I joined my mum to join judo. Then a local karate club opened up in the same building. That was Goju Karate. So I jumped into that. My mum also jumped into that. And we trained like Goju Karate for about a year. And then we moved. And this is a quite common occurrence in my life. We changed houses and moved to different like towns or cities. Like I'd say close to about 20 times when I was growing up. Like once every couple of years we'd move. So while in the beginning I never was really grounded in one art, I had this great opportunity to explore many different arts. So I go to one city and I'll do some kung fu. I go to another city and I'll try out like sambo. I move to another city and I'll try out it's like some kickboxing or whatever they have going there. And I did that growing up as a kid. Then I remember when I got a little bit older, a little bit more independent, I started exploring more. In England, it's very easy to find martial arts clubs. You just get the yellow pages back then, you open it up, look on the martial arts, and you can start finding places. And I'll start traveling out. I'll travel like an hour out, 2 hours out, 2.5 hours out to find clubs to train. So even I was in Portsmouth, I got to London to train. I remember I heard like the what's his name, like Shi the Shaolin monk in England. He had just come over. He was holding a seminar. I went up there, trained in that seminar, which was cool. I trained with like the an organization for Chinese Kung Fu. I can't remember the name. That was 30 odd years ago. But I just, anyone I could find, I'll go train. I was really, really passionate about doing this, and all my money, all my time went into training. Then I think I was about 16, and my mum got in contact with her father, because my mum was adopted. And so we went down, we met him, and it just turned out he was a huge Kung Fu fanatic.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I hit it off with him. Yeah, it was completely random, but a huge Kung Fu fanatic. I remember him saying he was upset that he never got to train it, but I remember he had this cupboard and it was full of Kung Fu movies.
Like my
And so yeah, and my house. And so I just start borrowing Kung Fu movies and watching them and, getting influenced by that. And I remember quite early on, around 16, 17, I decided I'm going to go to China. I'm going to train martial arts out there. I'm going to be able to fly, break bricks on my head, and all that crazy stuff. I was passionate, a little bit naive, but very passionate in those days. And so anyway, I was hooked on Kung Fu movies, training martial arts that I could find. And it was when I had just started working, just started earning a little bit of money. I started looking into the possibility of traveling to China for a holiday.
Hmm.
I go out, experience China, maybe find some martial arts to experience as well. And my mum, bless her, she had this great idea. She said, why just go on a holiday? Why not go out there for a year? Find a job, go out there for a year and really experience China. Me being me, I was like, that's a fantastic idea.
And you haven't
So,
come back and you didn't go back.
no, I haven't come back. My mom's regretted giving me that advice. I remember after I thought it was a good idea, I started looking for a job. I found a job. The first job was in Guangzhou. I had no idea where Guangzhou was or what martial arts were there, but I accepted the job and I was very excitedly told my mum. The job was in August. I think this was in like April of 2001, and the job started in August. And from that point on, she started telling me how horrible it would be, how they don't have pillows, they have their heads on wooden blocks with pillows, stuff like this. But I was hooked, I was excited. And so I started researching like what martial arts in Guangzhou, and the only thing you could find out back then was like the Wong Fei Hung movies. The Jet Li Wong Fei Hung movies would just become very popular. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go, I'll learn Hanga, whatever. And so August 2001, I hopped on a plane to China, planning to go back in a year's time. And yeah, now it's 23 years later and I'm still here.
Holy hell. So was the language barrier hard for you in the beginning? Because you can speak quite fluent, right?
Now I can, yes. But when I came over, I didn't speak any Chinese. And at that point, they didn't really speak English in China at that point. It just started to become something that was really heavily taught in schools. And also being in Guangzhou, I tried to get a book to learn some Mandarin phrases, but at that point in time, not many people spoke Mandarin either. It was all Cantonese. So I ended up literally having to figure it out as I go along. And when you're hungry and you want to buy something to eat, you learn pretty quickly.
So Sam Nung Wing Chun, Sam Nung is your Sifu, right? It's not the actual.
No, Samlam is a Wing Chun practitioner who brought Wing Chun to Guangzhou. So he learned Wing Chun in Foshan, and then around the late 1940s, maybe 1948, he moved to Guangzhou and started teaching in Guangzhou, and that became known as Guangzhou Wing Chun, or then Samlam Wing Chun after him.
Okay, and what's the difference between this type of Wing Chun style to like Yip Man or the Panam and other ones? Because I know there's a few now that I've actually heard of. Like when I knew about Wing Chun, it was always Yip Man, but now there's snake style. And thank God you've got that Facebook group because you're putting up some lovely information on Wing Chun, mate.
Oh, mate, there are so many versions of Wing Chun, and they are all really good in their own aspects. They're different. Some are slightly different, some are very different, but they're all really good and all offer very unique perspectives on like a single thing. To go back to your question, Sam Lang Wing Chun is very similar to Yip Man Wing Chun and Yu Choi Wing Chun. So we both have the 3 basic forms. We both work close body with Chi Sao. Both have the staff, the locked in Boom Guan, and the knives. The thing is, these 3 people, not Sumlan's teacher, Yun Kei San, Yu Choi, and Yip Man grew up together. They trained under the same people, so they all trained under Chan Hua Son's student Zhong So. So they all trained together. Then Yip Man went to Hong Kong. Sumlan came to Yun Kei San for Sumlan came to Guangzhou, and Yu Choi stayed in the Foshan area. So for all intents and purposes, it's the same art, but just expressed differently.
Mm. And is forms exactly the same as Yip Man? Because I've seen you do some of what like a jolt like this.
Yeah. So by this out or out like this. How do you say? We can say it's the same, and we can say it's different. So I can look at Yip Man Wing Chun and see everything they're doing and find it within what I do, but there's some stylistic differences. I think that would mainly come down to the focus of the previous generations. Like, what was Yip Man's focus when he was training, based on like his body type, his rationale, his personality. Same as Sumlan Wing Chun is heavily influenced by himself and his prior experience with his teacher before Yun Kei San, which is Jumbo. So his is more power based. They have a big focus on something we call Julik. Jew, this character Jew comes from like Jews that like when the emperor would be angry with you and he'll kill like 18 generations of your family. That word comes from that. So the idea is that there's supposed to be a very strong power there when we touch hands to overwhelm people. As you've seen on the group, the snake style Wing Chun like to use a lot more quick movements with their hands.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, but just expressed differently.
Yeah, like so does it all come from the Buddhist nun Moi, or what's the story there? Because there's always conflicts on that, and I want everyone to give it to us, bro. Come on.
So all I can say is we can accurately go back to about Yip Man, Yun Kei San, Yu Choi, that generation. We know that they trained with Chan Hua Son, and we know Chan Hua Son was a real person. You know, his house is in, I think it's like Ma Dongxun in Sondak. So he was a real person. He did teach people. The Wing Chun that his family teach, and they teach in Sondak, is quite different to what we do. So obviously somewhere between his teaching to what Yun Kei San, Yip Man, Yu Choi teach, there's been some changes. But why those changes came about, we don't really know. We can guess, we can speculate, but we don't really know. Anything beyond that, like to learn Zan, it becomes very hard to really trace. And so we have groups out here like Sumlan Wing Chun, Yip Man Wing Chun. We talk about Moi Si Tai, the nun, passing it down. We've got other groups that start talking about like Ji Sim Si, the monk who came down, passing it. Others focus more on what happens in the red bolts. Others focus on a guy called Tan Sao who brought opera to Canton, to Guangzhou. And so we have all these different origin stories, and it's very hard to really verify what is real and what is not.
As long as
but there are lots of,
as long as it's effective Wing Chun, that's all it matters. And if it makes if it makes you healthy in the body and the mind and spirit, it's good kung fu, no matter what it is.
Absolutely. I mean, the stories are always fun, and I think they do help inspire us when we're new to martial arts. It's always nice to hear legends, be like, wow, I want to be like that guy or that girl. So it's good. It does inspire the new generations to train hard. But for me personally, there's a certain point where you just kind of put those stories back and you just focus on the training.
Yeah. So with you've got the kicking skills as well. Are they all low line kicks or are they high kicks in Wing Chun?
So in what we learned, the kicks are low. We have many different types of kicks. The highest one that we would train would be the tiger tail kick, which in more modern terms would be a side kick. But that we wouldn't really kick above the solar plexus area. We'd keep it about that height max. But yeah, lots of leg kicks.
Yeah,
Yes,
where your power source is, really, isn't it? You know.
absolutely. Yes,
And
yes.
we did talk a little bit offline about iron skills. I've seen you doing some forearm training on the bridge, on the wall.
Yes.
But you did mention the Hong Sa Sao, the Cinnabar
Yeah,
Palm.
Hong Sa Sao. So Hong Sa Sao isn't an art that's really part of Wing Chun. My teacher picked it up from somewhere. He never really said where he picked it up. It's a very nice palm training method that starts with more internal training. And then once you finish that part, it goes into almost a typical iron palm kind of training, but you're not putting the bag on a table. You're holding the bag up in the air with the other hand. But it's yeah,
It's
it's a good training. Normally if people can make it through the training, it's hard. I mean, this is one thing I've noticed many people haven't quite realized when it comes to what we call like Gong training, like internal training. It's not soft, gentle stuff. It's mainly very hard, very intense, like a lot of isometric tension, dynamic tensions going on. It hurts to train. So many people, when they start doing this in the beginning, they think it's fun, but when you start telling them, well, repetitions need to be like in the 80s or the hundreds, or I'm sure you're like this, like 108 is a common number. Like do this 108 times,
yeah, 100.
and by the time, yeah, I know, but by 30, you're screaming in pain, but you have to keep going. They're very intense. So a lot of people they start and then they kind of give up partway through, which is understandable. But it's a shame because from my experience with training this, about 3 months in, a very simple like slap on someone's shoulder and it comes up black and they can't lift their arm for like 10, 15 minutes. And that's just with a few months training. So it's well,
So
a lot of this stuff, if you invest the time into it, there is something very special that comes from it.
I believe so. Do you think that all the dynamic tension work and the soft work for that iron palm method is to help with the meridians and the chi flow after the conditioning, or is it before the conditioning, or is it a different part? Because you obviously use Tita, Jiao, and all that.
Yes, yes, yes. So for Hong Sa Sao, you start off with doing like um dynamic exercises, and these lead into short range and long range strikes. So this is all about creating the power for hitting people with. Once you develop that power, then you go into the conditioning. Conditioning is kind of I don't want to say a secondary focus, but if you don't train it, but you've done the beginning training, you can still hit people very, very hard with the palm. The conditioning aspect of it just gives you that extra kind of oomph, like the cherry on the cake with the training.
And what type of power do you guys use, like for ging, like Chun Ging? What's the
So basically in Samlang Wing Chun, we have two powers we focus on. The first one is turn game, which is long power, of course, and then the second one is doing game. Inch power was never used out here until Bruce Lee interviews became popular, and then the internet became more popular, and people started looking into what Yip Man Wing Chun is like because like when I started, people in the West didn't really know about Samlang Wing Chun, and I'll be online and be like, "No, you're lying. There's only Yip Man Wing Chun." But out here, they're like, "Who's Yip Man?" For the most part, like especially in Guangzhou, it's like Yip Man wasn't that well known until he became popular over the internet and people started learning more about him here.
oh
So
wow.
of course, like anyone, they started looking up and finding out, and then they started adopting terms as well. So we used Doing Ging, and then it changed to being called like Chun Ging, like the inch power.
Yeah, well,
But yeah, we train both.
inch power takes a little bit more time of development of the tendons and ligaments, sinews, and
Yes,
understanding of the body to release the force.
yes,
Compared to
yes,
normal fighting, you got long power, right? That's normal
yes,
way. So
yes.
you start with the long and then get to the short.
Exactly. Yes, it was. I remember it was always expressed very specifically. First, train the long power. If you don't train the long power, you're going to struggle with the short power. And this is why when we do the basic techniques, when we punch, we never started just from a short range. It's always from a fully chambered range first. And then once we can do that fast, we can do it relaxed, and we can do it powerful, then we'll start moving into training for like pinch power or short power.
And that reminds me of the clip where the old book against the wall.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome, man. Like that's an old method, even with the telephone book we used to do in Yolkuma.
It's an amazing training. I mean, so this is one of the things from Guangzhou Wing Chun or Samlong Wing Chun, which I think differs a little bit to maybe Yip Man or other Wing Chun that we see. The punch itself, we have various stages of conditioning methods for it. Some of them are done with paper, like you saw with the book. The book's one for training short power. Now, for us, that book has to stay on the wall for 100 hits, and there's nothing holding it there but your fist.
Oh,
So you have to hit it hard.
hard. People, it's hard, actually hard. It's not that easy because you're not allowed to let that book slide, right?
No, and you can't move your hand up. You just pull it off, and then you have to hit back. You know, I encourage anybody doing Wing Chun, give it a try. It's great fun. It will condition your hands, and you will know if you're not fast enough because you will punch a solid brick wall.
Absolutely, and not only that, but you're punching a brick wall through that book, so you're not moving a bag, so to speak, but you got to make sure that that book doesn't move and that your retracting arm is always on target in a perfect straight line. And that's when I saw you do it, I'm like, yes, awesome. No, I love it.
This is so what I've noticed out here is that there is a difference in training between those who have gone through the Bai Si ceremony and those who have not. So I was very fortunate with Wing Chun. Very early on, I was invited to Bai Si to my teacher, and then the training changed dramatically. I stopped paying for classes. I started going to home to train, and the training moved from forms and techniques to conditioning and development training for different things. So, like I said, the training with the book, we call that nailing punch because you have to nail the book to the wall. And when you hit someone, it's not just like a tap, you're really driving into them. So it creates a lot of power in the punch, especially a short range punch. But that's just one of like 3 or 4 different ways we train. So this is what we call like a hard training for conditioning. Then we move into more softer trainings to develop speed. I don't know if I've put on the group or not, but like we do an exercise where we get like a newspaper and we have to hold it out, and you have to be able to break the newspaper with a punch. But it's not just rip it; you have to make it split right down the middle.
Okay.
And there's a very unique sound when you do that. It's like a crack, and it's just about the speed. But if you just try to hit it fast, it doesn't work. You have to get the relaxed movement with it.
Is it a full penetration through, or is it just a tap?
Full penetration through. So your hands held up straight, and then you're hitting it. So you can't really go too far through, but you hit it, and that force will continue to pass through the paper and rip it in two. I'll see if I can find the clip. I'll upload it later.
Is that more to develop that soft power to relax?
Yes. We need a combination of being soft, being relaxed, and being fast, and being able to hit with power at the same time. And so, with paper, we have like, again, 3-4 different methods that we train to condition. We also do some conditioning on the floor with the knuckles as well for the punching. We got like static holds. We got like plyometric movements as well. And so we take one thing and we train it from many different angles to make sure it's really effective.
And do you guys use any Fungnan, or is it just a normal?
So for Samlong Wing Chun, it's not specifically taught, but a lot of people, they have a relaxed hand. So when we punch, we don't ball up our fists. We always keep like maybe like a finger or a pencil can fit in the gap because we're hitting with the knuckles rather than the flat of a hand. But naturally, people tend to have this knuckle, the Fong'an, out a little bit more. But it's not a specific training. But for the Shaolin Kung Fu that I do, we specifically focus on the Fong'an Choi.
Oh, okay.
Which is fun.
And do you guys do any like the Kam Na Sao, and is that part of Wing Chun hidden in any of the moves, or it doesn't?
Yes. We do a fair bit of Kamla Sao. It's not taught separately. Like, okay, here are the 18 movements or the 36 movements of Kamla. It's just like, okay, if you get into this position, you know, you can attack the elbow, twist the wrist. It's learned more hands-on to Chi Sao. Because our idea is if we touch hands, we're either hitting you or we're grabbing something and basically twisting it to
Well, that's where
incapacitate.
that's where I was leading. To me, when I see any type of sensitivity and you cross that bridge, there's that wrist to grab, and
Oh, absolutely.
you don't always have to try to hit them when you could always grab that wrist. And
Of course, of course. Everything's game, you
that's if
know.
they're slow, right? That's if they're slow.
Yes, yes, yeah. No, it's no, it's we cover all aspects. So we do throws, we do locks, kicks, and punches
All
when
right.
we train.
We're just about to have a break and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, Keith, we'll get back to you in just a
Sounds
moment.
good, mate.
All right. Welcome back to the Tao Kung Fu podcast. I've got Sifu Keith King from the Nung Wing Chun Kung from Guangzhou. Welcome back, brother. Sorry for the cutout and all that. This is Zoom, man. This is live.
No worries, mate. No worries.
All right. Do you think all your previous training before Wing Chun has helped you with Wing Chun?
I do think so. Yes. It's helped me adapt to different ways of training quicker. It made it easy for me to kind of pick up and grasp concepts. This was very important for me in the beginning because this is my early days in Guangzhou when I started training. So I couldn't speak Cantonese at that time, and my Sifu didn't really speak any English. So I had to be able to see what was going on and learn by watching rather than just listening. And I think that helped because for my previous training, when my teacher was teaching, I'd step back and I'd first watch what his hands do, then I'd watch what his feet do, then I'd watch what his body does. So I'm watching every part of his body. Whereas some of the people who trained with me, who are native speakers, of course, they just listened and watched their hands. So I think that background helped me realize that there's different parts of the body we need to be aware of and to make sure we're following correctly to do the movements right.
I think it's laid a decent foundation for you to pick something up quicker.
Yes, yes, very much so, very much so.
The Muk Jong behind you, is it the 108
Yes.
moves or?
Oh my God, it really depends how you want to count it. Some people say 108. Some people say like 136. For me, I think the number 108 is kind of just used because we like that number. But our dummy form is really long compared to what I've seen of some other arts. But our dummy form is made up of two different dummies or two different wooden dummy trainings. The first part, which is a shorter part, is from Sumlang's first teacher, Joan Bolt, and it has a very distinct style of play, which is quite hard and aggressive. And then the second half is Yun Kei San's wooden dummy, which is a lot more intricate, a lot more sticking, a lot more sliding around the dummy, using positioning and angling.
You're friends with Henry as well, my friend Henry Yeung.
Yes,
He's
yes,
all
yes.
holding out, all you Wing Chunners all holding out on CPG. I didn't know that. That's so bloody cool, man. That's so cool.
Oh, it's cool. It's good, man. There's lots of really cool people out there. If I remember, Henry also does Sumlang Wing Chun from one of Sumlang's family members or that line. So his stuff should be quite similar to what I do, although again, it will have its stylistic differences as well.
Nice. I know that the Vietnamese Wing Chun, they have like 5 animals and all that. Is that being added on or?
So we don't have that out here. The guy who took Wing Chun to Vietnam, Yun Zai Wan, is Yun Kei San's older brother. So they train together. They should have generally the same martial art. So what happened with it when it went to Vietnam, I'm not sure. But yeah, they now have they have additional forms in there, so they have their, like as you're saying, the 5 animals and a very unique wooden dummy that's much bigger than ours and kind of like rocks back and forth.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Interesting training.
Massive. It's absolute massive.
Yes.
This one, it would build some power, that's for sure.
Yes. The other advantage, if you look at the dummy, because it moves, you got that way where you can stick to the dummy and try and just pull it off balance, but without hitting it too hard so it moves away. So there's a nice kind of way of training the stickiness of Wing Chun on that dummy.
And it's a little bit more alive, so to speak, I guess.
Yes.
A bit more
Yes.
lively.
Yes.
Do you, I remember when I was in Guangzhou, researching Yokumon and Bat Mei from Ha Hong Hong.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a trip, to be in Guangzhou and Hong Kong. I absolutely missed the place. It's probably changed a lot now with all the facial recognition everywhere, and China's probably
Yeah. Well, Guangzhou is an awesome city. It's one of the few cities where you can see a really modern China, but we still have a lot of the old traditional Cantonese culture here as well. They've kept a pretty good balance there. So we can see, like, we can walk past Guangzhou Tower, go into like Zhujiang Newtown area where it's all modern buildings, the IFC, Four Seasons, things like this, and then I can take you just down the back road, and you'll be like being back in the 1800s. It's very cool.
And they do have some very old architecture as well there.
Yes, yes. Yeah, Guangzhou is famous for like 3 different styles of architecture. We've got like the famous one, which everyone knows, which is the Saigon Daingok with the big wooden doors that can slide open that you see in the Kung Fu movies. We also have the Care Lao, which is more like a convenience store or a shop underneath, and the people live above. And they have like the second floor is extended out over the road, so when you walk, you don't get rained on. And then we have like the Yeongok, which is the buildings that were influenced by the Westerners that were coming in. Because unlike Persia Island, we have a lot of Western architecture there from the British and the French when they went there. And that style went into the very affluent areas of Guangzhou.
Same as Macau.
Yes, yes.
And are they open to teach the Sifus of Wing Chun there that like taking on Westerners? Are they so, or when I was there, they were excited?
Yes, they can be very excited to have a foreigner training with you. Can be quite appealing because then the teacher has a lot of face. But just being a foreigner doesn't mean you're going to get access to good quality martial arts out here. There's been many cases I've seen where people, really passionate people, have come out here to train, and they'll go train with some masters, and the masters will kind of take their money and maybe give the training off to one of the teenage students to train them while they go about their regular day. It's, not all teachers are like that. Some teachers are very passionate and teach really well, but I have seen lots of people come out here and then not get the best of experiences as well. So it's kind of hit and miss.
Yeah, true. That's a shame because there is some good Sifus out there, that's for sure.
Oh, China is one of these places where, there's so many people that there's a broad spectrum of the kind of masters you can meet, and there's a lot of bad stuff, there's a lot of questionable stuff, but every now and again you find some really amazing stuff that you're just in awe of, and you're just like, wow, that stuff that I thought was not real or undoable, it happens. You have these people who do stuff like this, and when you can meet these kind of masters like this, it's a really eye-opening experience. The only issue is they're not very public with what they do, and so it's very hard to find them.
Do you guys do the Mosi, line dance and that? Is that part of Wing Chun? I know it wasn't here when I've looked around.
No, it's in Foshan. Some groups do the Mosi. At Son, the Sundak Wing Chun has the Mosi, the lion dancing. But for Sundak Wing Chun, we don't have it. For most Foshan Wing Chuns, I don't think they have it as well.
What I love about Wing Chun is the directness, and they've only got 3 hand forms, right? Because as you, like me, as I've gotten older, I've accumulated all these sets like Bap Mei, Yokomun, and it's just,
Right.
you don't need that many sets to fight, in my honest opinion. And that can be the downfall of arts that have 18 Shaolin weapons, 18 forms, and
Yes.
or more. You know, your time's always on making sure the form's perfect. But with Wing Chun, it goes straight into Gong Sao, you know, and fighting aspects, and that's what makes it a very effective and well-rounded style. Unfortunately, I've seen some bad Wing Chun people pulling off their chain punches from outer range and they get smashed, but at least they engage. And that's one thing I've respected with Wing Chun. They've always testing their bridge and hands. You know, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a lot. If we go back to like the basic reasons for learning Kung Fu, it's either you're getting revenge for someone who did something, in which case you don't need a lot. You just need one or two movements that you can do really, really well. Or you're looking for something a little bit more, you know, more robust kind of self-defense system, so you learn a bit more, but you don't need to have a lot of forms. Like I said, for Samlang Wing Chun, the forms are a small part of what we do. Our first training, we don't even touch the forms. We go through a training called the Sub E6, which is 12 basic techniques. And you got like 4 major punches that we focus on, then a few defense movements, a couple of stepping movements, a sweep, and that's it. And you train the hell out of that for like 6 months before you even think about learning the form. And that's from doing it individually to doing it partnered. For us, we would then pull on some gloves and we do a free form as well. Not everybody does that, but for us, that was a big thing as well. And so you just learn to use the very basic concepts of Wing Chun to basically scrap.
Do you find it?
And then once you can do that,
do you find
sorry.
it hard? Sorry to cut you off, bro. Do you find it hard to use Wing Chun with gloves on?
Yes, to a degree, because we're used to moving our hands within a very tight space, and depending on the gloves, maybe you need to open up a little bit more to do that. So if you're going for like some big boxing gloves, it's quite difficult, but you know, MMA gloves work okay. And that's what we would do. We would get some like kind of MMA gloves. We experimented with using something like head protection or not. We found with head protection, we would end up getting knocked out anyway because we thought we were protected when we were, you know, you don't get cut up, but it rings your bell a lot.
It does. It
So,
does. It does absorb, and I think I did a little video on that about headgear and no headgear. Light sparring, it's good with headgear, but if you're going full contact, it can rattle that brain because the shock goes through, and that can be that could be horrible. But somehow you got to spar, right?
yes,
You got to
yes,
get it in.
and so that was the great thing I liked about the Guangzhou Wing Chun is that we did all that process before we really touched on the forms.
Do you find that you're more of a hands person than a kicking Wing Chun man?
Personally, no, I'm quite even with both, but I think that also stems from my background in other martial arts where kicking was heavily emphasized. So I've always made sure my kicking is okay as well. One thing you learn with Wing Chun is that ranges are much closer than what we like to believe they are. So it's very useful to be able to kick when most people think it's only punching range.
So it's very, yes, if you touch the bridge, you should be able to kick.
Yes, if you touch, you punch. I mean, this is one of the things that I see with a lot of the younger generations when they're training now is they're not quite fluent in on the distancing yet. And so when their wrists cross, then they think they're in striking range, but they're not quite there yet. And that leads to like a loss of form where they lean in to try and reach.
And that reminds me, I see a lot of Wing Chun leaning back though. Do you guys, I've seen, I think on one of your clips, they use like a hum bat boy, like in Bap Mei, you know?
Yeah. We're our body posture is similar to like what you do. We don't lean back. That's something I've seen more of the Hong Kong, the Yip Man Wing Chun guys have more of a straighter back and lean back. We just want to make the chest and stomach area as small as possible. So we were like what we call like Ting Yum. So we turn the hips up and then we'll sink the chest, drop the shoulders. The elbows have to stay down. So here is very small.
So
And then
similar, so
this is how we do
similar.
our fight.
Yeah,
Yes,
Tang Hang, you know?
yes. Yeah, it gives two advantage. Well, not advantage might be not the right word, but two benefits. Is one, you create a smaller target for people to hit, and then also you've got a longer extension of the arms because your shoulders are brought down
Shoulders,
and
yeah.
in.
Shoulders come a little bit forward. So,
Yes.
yeah, no, that's unreal. When I saw that on your clips, I'm like, yes, and so I can relate. And so you're open, you're teaching now, right? You're teaching it out.
Yes, yes. I've been teaching Wing Chun out here since I think about 2006. I've never taught it on a big scale because I always feel that for an art like Wing Chun, if you have lots of students at one time, you can't really train them very well. So I always keep my student bodies quite small, like 3 or 4 people together at a time, and I teach different people on different days. That way I can make sure I'm touching hands with them and I can really make sure I can see what they're doing.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure you'll find the same with back mates, like the difference of your elbow position from here to here can make a huge difference of the effect.
absolutely. And 4 people you can keep an eye on and you can really drill them better.
Yes. Yeah.
So when it comes to internal part, does the Silam Tao can be done soft, or do you have a separate internal Hey Gong or anything like that, apart from your Cinnabar palm tension and stuff? Is there another part of Wing Chun that is on softness and Qigong?
Yes, for some long Wing Chun, Guangzhou Wing Chun, there is. We have a Qigong form called San Hei Guai Yun, which is like the returning the breath to the original source, and it's Qigong form that Sam Lung learned from another guy. He didn't learn it from UK San or Jumbo. He was taught this Qigong form because with the Wing Chun, we're always hunched over. It can have a harmful effect on our internal organs. And so he was taught this to kind of reopen up the chest, realign the organs, and to try and maintain his health that way. One of the sad things you'll find with Wing Chun is a lot of the practitioners, they normally live until around 60, maybe 70. There's a few that have gone over, but most die relatively young. And there's this idea that it might be related to how we're always having our posture hunched over. So this qigong form was brought into some Wing Chun to kind of negate that a little bit.
Kind of, counteracts the hunchback type. That's
Yes.
also in Hakka arts. I've always been told that too much hum hum bap boy and compression on the organs can shorten the life somewhat, or
Yes.
illnesses and all sorts of shit, But
Mhm.
that's great because I also do one yun yat hey jern. So the
Mhm.
primordial chaos one chi palm, and it's very,
Mhm. Mhm.
very relaxed. And when you said you got the one yun, return
Yep.
return it back to the original source. So that's cool. I wonder if it's very similar.
Yeah, we'll have to compare sometime. It's a great little form to do. It's not something where many people have this idea that if they do like a qigong form after like a few months, they're gonna have like qi energy coming out of the hands and stuff like this, and that doesn't happen. But it's a really nice way to start the day. If you got like a headache or you're feeling lethargic, it's a great form to do to give you a bit of energy, to open up, get you breathing deeply again. It's a great stress reducer. One of the interesting things with it, we have a few different techniques, but each technique has a very specific purpose. And so you don't have to do the whole form. You can just take one technique or two techniques out there. For example, one of the techniques really focuses on grinding and massaging the kidneys. Another one will focus on really compressing and then expanding the lungs. And so you can pick what you need to train for your current status, or you can, if you're feeling okay, you can generally just train the whole form.
And you also told me that you do the I Ching Ching and the other one. What was the other one? The Shaolin I Ching.
The Sai Shui Ging.
Yeah.
Yes, this was something I've been, after many years of I've been very fortunate to be able to get to learn. About 4 years ago now, I was chatting with a guy I've actually known since 2006, a martial artist, and I knew him through Wing Chun, but I never knew his background in Shaolin. And so we're good friends and we're hanging out talking, and every now and again he would say something or do something that would just make me, it would pique my curiosity. I'm like, wait, what's going on there? Because to look at him, he's not your typical like kung fu master kind of look. He's very short. He kind of resembles like Hong Jinbao, like Sammo Hung a little bit. It's a little bit podgy. But I like hanging out with him because he's like very close to 80, but he has the energy of a 5-year-old kid.
Oh my God.
He's highly energetic. He's always happy, always on the move. And when I was meeting him, I was in my late 30s, coming into my early 40s at that time, and I was tired all the time from work, and I was always like, man, I wish I could have that kind of energy. So me being me, I started hanging out with him and asking him more and more questions. And over the years, we built a very close relationship, and he would just start talking about certain things or mentioning certain things about what he trained. And he never really mentioned that he did like Yi Jing Jing or Xi Shui Jing. He said he trained Shaolin. I was like, okay, cool. As we mentioned before, I love martial arts, any martial arts. If I get the chance, I'll jump in and try. There was a couple of things that really got me to want to train with him. One of them was we were in McDonald's, typical Chinese food, McDonald's, right? And we're on the high stools. And so there's a small table between us, and I can plant my feet firmly on the floor, no problem at all. He can't because he's short. And so he's got his feet dangling off the edge of the chair, and we're talking about like some chin na stuff. And he told me to grab him. So I grabbed him on the table like this, and he just flicked his hand, pulled, and I've flown across this table in McDonald's.
Wow.
So and so I'm laying there on the table, and I'm like, wait a second. Now, if it's someone my own size, they've got their feet on the floor, I can see, the brute force thanking me, but he can't root on anything. It's just like, oh, and I've flown across it. I'm like, what did you do there? And he's just like, oh, he like very nonchalant. I just, just like, he's like the eagle claw and I pull in, and I'm like, no, there's something more there. And so we started talking, and I was interested, but it was like a year after that of meeting him, constantly talking, and him just like, go home, try this, go home, do this. And me being me, I'll go home and do these random things, and he'll come back checking out, oh, okay, you've made some progress with this. And then it was opened up for me to come in and start training with him, and I Baisi to him, and that's when I started learning Yi Jing Jing. And it's a very powerful training. I can say that. I can understand now why Shaolin was famous for this in the past.
For the people that don't know, that's the muscle tendon work for the Yi Jing Jing. And the other one, is that for the brain marrow washing, they call it, of Shaolin?
Yeah, the bone marrow washing. So Yi Jing Jing is about your training your physical body. It's something that Damo, the Buddhist monk who came across, he taught to a few practitioners so they can strengthen their bodies, so they will not be faced by physical hardships for their meditation and cultivation. It wasn't something that was technically developed for martial arts. It was developed so, no matter what I'm doing, I don't have to be concerned about physical problems, people hitting me, my body can take it. I don't worry about not having physical strength. I can meditate for hours on end and not really worry about the fatigue from that. So it was a physical training to train the bodies. And what happens with is training it over the years, it goes from an external training to an internal training once you get to a certain point. But yeah, it's a very tough training.
I've seen on YouTube, I don't know if they're all the same, but the muscle tendon work is a standing form and the seated one is the bone marrow. I'm not sure if that's
Uh, you can work it like that. I mean, on the internet, you will find many different things going under these two names. The names themselves are very famous. And so many people link what they do to the names for finding students or popularity or just credibility. You can look at Yi Jing as kind of like a very hard form of yoga.
I was about to
It's
say that coming from Damo, the Indian monk, it would
yes,
be a part yogic type of stretching and
yes.
stuff, right?
Yeah, well, we need to remember this was something that was designed for and trained by mountain hermits. They didn't have to go work in an office like 12 hours a day and stuff like this. They had time. It's time intensive, and because I can't really go into too much about this because we have an agreement within our family that we don't
Yeah,
share the art unless someone to the family. But we can basically look at it that you are putting your body into very taxing positions that require a lot of uh, isometric and dynamic tension over prolonged periods of time. And different postures will cause different meridians in your body to open up and different ones to close off, which creates an internal pressure because the chi and the blood, if you want to use the term, cannot flow through. And you can look at that internal pressure building up is over time, it's going to expand those vessels. So the blood flow and the chi flow can be more prominent.
nice.
This is the idea. Of course, I've not had the opportunity to go do any scientific verification of this, but that's something I would like to do in the future. But that's the basic idea. So you have this movement that's blocking some of the pathways, and then you got the build up of pressure,
And
and
then
that causes
release.
that pathway to expand and grow. Then you release, and then you get the flow going.
Nice.
So it pushes through blockages, and it clears out the channels so you can get a very smooth flow. And that's where it goes from being a physical training to an internal training.
Just that alone is perfect for health, I say.
Oh, it's it's amazing, mate, to be honest. I mean, like I said, I saw my current Sifu. He's like a 5-year-old kid when he's like close to 80. After training this for a couple of years, my energy levels are much higher. I average, not by choice, it's very busy out here in China, but I average like 5 hours sleep a night, and I don't get tired during the day. So I feel this way alone, it has benefits.
Well, I went to Shaolin Temple a few times as well, and back then they did. I've got it on VHS of the image of Damo in the rock.
Yes.
Have you ever seen that?
I have not gone up to the rock personally. I went to the Shaolin once back in the early 2000s, and I remember I left quite disappointed with what I saw up there at the time. And then after that, I never went back. So
It's very
unfortunately, I've
it's,
not had the chance to
it's
go there.
become such
Yes.
a tourist trap now, but when I was there was hardly. They still had no road. We had to get a horse and cart, and
Right.
at the temple, it had outside the rock of Damo, inside the rock, an image of him. And I've
Hmm.
got it on video, and the hall where they stamp the ground, with all the
Yep.
divots and the weapons, and we just walked straight in. There was no one there, and they I think some of the monks kicked us out, but
Yep.
we filmed it all, and we got so much great footage, and just I don't know how, and I think you did say the wall facing qigong. Is that the same as Damo's one?
Yes. So what Dharma gave to us is three things. He gave us the wall-facing meditation, he gave us the Yi Jing Jing and the Si Shui Jing. So these are the three core things that he passed down. Um, they're not so much of a focus in Shaolin anymore. Shaolin's after the rebuilding of it in the late 70s, early 80s, it's gone in a new direction, much more performance-based. Nowadays, if you're out here, you see advertisements for like school children to go there over the summer holidays and train, things like this. But back when my Qigong, my Sifu was in Shaolin Temple, it was very different. So this is in the like 40s and 30s when he was there. It was a very much a monk's life. You woke up, you did your prayers, you did your meditations, you looked after your teacher, you cleaned the temple, and then in the evening, then you go and you train. So
when I was there, the last time I was there was that many wushu guans everywhere.
mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
skills of wushu outside the temple, hundreds of students.
Yeah.
Oh man, they got thousands of people training Shaolin.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, but I'm not a fan of wushu, man. I love Kung Fu, but I'm not.
But again, that goes to what we were talking before about. You don't need that many forms. Nowadays, there's a lot of forms training going on, and you know they have the specific like Xiao Hong Chuan, Xixing Chuan. These ones, the animal styles are very popular because they're very visually appealing. However, back listening to stories from my Sifu and from what he said about his Sifu, forms training wasn't that big. You did 2 or 3 forms, and you focus on those forms. The main training was on the gong. So for our group, because in the past, Shaolin was separated into different courtyards, like north, south, east, and west. For our group, which comes from the east courtyard, it was mainly focused on training the three key items from Damo, and then you did like 2 or 3 forms, and you know that was it. Just training the gong, training the power behind it, the conditioning, things like this.
Nice. Just a couple of more questions. So have you got yourself set up yet with a YouTube page? We were talking about you're thinking about it and stuff like that. If someone wants to contact you and learn from you, is it possible for the viewers?
It is. I'm probably not as easy to get hold of as some people, but of course, they can find me on Facebook, or join that group I have. You know, just Facebook my name. You should find me. I'm the white guy in the wooden dummy. They can also drop me an email. My email is kungfuspirit@outlook.com. Or if they have WeChat, they can add me on WeChat as well. I don't think WeChat's so popular in the Western world yet.
Not here.
I'm sure it will take over one day. It's the
maybe with all the Chinese people, all the Chinese will use WeChat for sure. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge and your story, mate. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I hope we can do another part 2 later on.
Sure, I'd love it. It would be very cool.
All right, so if everyone that's watching, if you'd like to learn this style of Wing Chun from Sifu Keith King, contact him on Facebook or what he said, and hopefully you'll have a YouTube page that you can promote yourself and the style. And I wish you all the best, brother, because that's what Kung Fu is about. The mold duck sharing is caring and keeping these arts alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially keeping the arts alive, because more and more people, as you said, they like the forms, they like the wushu, but Kung Fu's in the training behind that. You know, the conditioning, the training of the power, stuff like this. And this stuff is a dying art.
It is. Kung Fu is a dying art at the moment. What about just one more? MMA is quite big in China now, and
yes, very big now, very popular.
Do you find many of the Kung Fu people are jumping ship, or they're still like, no, I want to do traditional, or they combining now?
Oh, it's a mix. Some people really like it. Some people really like to stick with traditional stuff. Some people do a bit of both. Cross training is quite common. Even in the old days, it's like when I sat down like a while ago, I went to a big meeting with all the old masters in Foshan, and you know, this guy's a Wing Chun guy, but he's also done Bak Main, right foot in the Hangar. This guy's a Hangar guy, but he's also done all this other stuff as well. Like, so cross training's always been around out here. And yeah, the younger guys like to do some MMA as well, be it like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or just go to an MMA club. It's getting there. The thing I don't see yet is traditional martial arts maybe learning some things from these more modern arts to bring in to make their skills a little bit more practical for fighting. Not because they're not practical, it's just the way people train normally isn't really focused on the self-defense or the fighting aspect as much now.
Too many forms, see?
Yeah.
All right, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to have part 2 with you. Have a lovely night. It's going on the midnight here.
Will do.
And I'm an
All
old.
right, cool. Thank you for staying up so late.
All right, brother. Take care, and
All right.
yes,
Good to
we'll
talk
chat
with you.
soon.
Sounds good, mate. Sounds good. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.